Hello there. Today we're gonna again try a new thing. I'll try to summarize my learnings from the first event, match racing event of the year with the new rules. So we're gonna, as usual, also look at the situation with the boats over here. We'll have our racing rules of sailing just to analyze the situation. But here I also share basically the agenda that I would like to go through. There's well, maybe 5 interesting things that I picked up here. So feel free. I'm just streaming now on the Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, Kick, YouTube, and you can also watch the recording later on on YouTube. But feel free to vote. Leave the comments what you're interested to watch first. So we're going to be watching, checking 2 new actually changes in the rule and how it affects the situation. A couple of tactical, interesting situations that was there, and maybe the last things is a little bit related to umpire mechanics, but it's also if you're doing the match racing, it's going to be helpful to understand how the umpires work. This is going to be advanced level, so I definitely just want. So we're not going to go through the basics. We're going to go into very big details, and when we're going to go to the rules, there will be such new nuances that we've been even discussing with the umpires. That there might be different opinions on that one, how the new rules are interpreted. So yeah, jumping in here, just want to just tell a few words about the event and where this coming new learnings are coming from. So been about 1 month ago at the event in France. So this is event which is happening in Rouen. Very nice historical city where they burned Jeanne d'Arc a long time ago. Definitely worth a visit. But next to Rouen, there is a small lake over here. So you can see it's extremely tiny. But it also extremely good for the match racing. Provides the different tactical situation as the always very shifty winds, and as well as always a lot of play with abstractions. That's why we can also discuss. We had a lot of situations with the rules related to the abstraction rule. So I've been in that event as a part of the umpire team. So of course I'll be providing the kind of points of view what we can be discussing from the umpiring team, but also maybe from the tactical point of view, there will be some thoughts on the coaching level. Yeah, so feel free just to let you guys let me know if there is any particular things interesting to it. Otherwise, we're gonna go just one by one. So leave a comment if you want to go through any of those situations. Leave a number in the comment. Okay, so now this year brought the new rules as this is new Olympic cycle in the sail racing. So in match racing, there's not that much changes, but there's a few changes. And one of the changes which was brought here is the new rule C 2.7. So as you can see here, what the rule says is that there is a new rule, addition 16.2, which basically repeats what has been done and what has been already told in the previous call book. So if you remember, if you look at the old call book, there was a call which is D5, D6. Let me go through it. D5, D6. No, going further. Yeah, so this is a well-known rule which basically says in the short term that in match racing, when you are on the beat to windward, that the boats which is dialing down cannot dial down the board boats more than 90 degrees. So if you are dialing as a yellow boat dialing down more than 90 degrees below the wind, so you are breaking the mechanism. So usually the dial down just happens when the yellow boat over here wants to make sure that the blue boat doesn't get the right. So making sure that the blue boat taps away. Now, but there was a rule that would just actually says that you cannot go more than 90 degrees. So the nuance that this always have been the case, and this rule that, or it was not a rule, it was a call book that you can check in the old book, and that it also stays in the new call book. So this is a new call book, as you can see, 2025. There's a very similar call, what would be 9D, yeah, D5. So the same call. However, the call D6, which basically talks here that there will be a penalty on the boat which goes below 90 degrees, has been removed. And why it was removed from the call book? Because there was basically the rule has been added over here. And as we also can see what is the intention, what was this, 23 submission, 50, 23. So what I'm looking right now is submissions. Basically here you can see why the rules were changed if you want to look at it. So let's look why this rule was changed. What was the purpose? So the 50, just basically the rule says that just we have already the call D6, so let's make it as a rule. And reasons so that that the call D6 was already making a rule, so it's better just to include the rule into the interpretation. So one thing which is worth actually mentioning is that you can see clearly from here that that was not the intention of this proposal, is just to make any change into how the currently game is played. So it's not a game changer. However, it's important that there was a tiny change that might brings a small nuance. So let's look at the tiny change in the rule. So if in the old book in D5, the terminology was here on the leg on the course to the windward mark. So the rule applied if the boats were on the leg of the course to windward mark, which means that if this is a windward mark, they're sailing to windward mark. However, in the rule, the rule says sailing to the mark that is windward of them, and honestly, doesn't seem to be that there is a big difference. That there is it seems to be that it's exactly the same. So sailing to the mark and the windward of them, and that's true. It's when the boats are within the course. But there's one situation which did not really necessarily happen in the book, but we have discussed it together with the umpires before, is there's a situation which happens in the downwind jail, and I will want to share what kind of like interpretation we had there, and also discussion. So the rule over here, what basically is, as you know, in the downwind jail, what's happens that this is a leeward mark. Two boats are sailing to put exactly the same colors. Yeah, two boats are sailing below, and since there is no rule 17 in match racing, the boats can actually sail below the proper course and below the ley line. So now, if the boats are now where they are over here in the downwind jail, what might happen is the situation, what usually is happening is that this boat wants to eventually jibe and go to the mark, and yellow wants to stay jibe and stay ahead. So overall, what usually happens is that in the old interpretation of the rules, in the old interpretation, when we are using the word on the leg to the course to the windward mark, it was very clear that in this situation, this call was not applied because they're not on the leg to the windward mark, they're sailing to the downwind mark. They just passed the downwind mark, but they're gonna sail back to the downwind mark and around it. However, in the new reading of the rule, calling it sailing to the mark that is windward of them, that could be interpreted that now they will be sailing to the mark, that their next mark is actually now windward of them. And again, this is also the discussions that we also had before, what exactly is the windward of them, but I think this is one of the interpretations that you can have of this word. They're sailing, their next mark is this one, and this is this is basically they're sailing to them. So if we look at the rule, usually what the issue or the potential difference in interpretations might happen in here is that when this boat is usually jibes to port and then wants to go back, and if this boat is just really barely able to jibe, very majority of the time tactically this boat will jibe back and will go ahead. However, there's also a possibility that this boat, for example, bears off and points, wanting actually this boat to take and avoiding to keep clear, so jibe back, and then this boat goes back. So if you take one particular interpretation of this new rule, is that you can think about it that now that this is a starboard tack boat, yellow is a starboard tack boat, and by going this way, she will bear off to the course. She's bearing off to a different course, which is more than 90 degrees from true wind. So the wind is coming from here. That was the old course. Now she's doing this hunting course. She's bearing off to to the course which is more than 90 degrees from true wind. And unless this boat, by bearing off, continuously goes and jibes back, this is, if she does this way, continuously bears off and goes back, that's her proper course. That's her fastest way to sail around the course. However, if she bears off and points, continues sailing this way, this is her below her proper course, because she will need to go there. And as a result of it, the port tack boat, as a result of this bear off, this boat will need to, port boat must change tack to course to immediately continue to keep clear, which means that this boat would be, if she just goes there and barely can jibe, if yellow keeps this course, that's okay, but if she points lower and sails below her proper course, then blue needs to avoid. Then we have a situation that this hunting maneuver of yellow is, if it's interpreted this way, completely changes the game over here, because it means that this hunting maneuver making the yellow, it just takes this maneuver away from yellow. And again, if we go back to the submission, so meaning like to understand what was the reason of this introduction of the rule, and I think there is no such thing here which indicates that would be a game changer. So there was no really intention to provide a game changer of this situation. There was no intention to provide a change in the game that would give more better possibility, because tactically it gives better possibility for the blue to escape the jail. So that was not the intention. So the wording itself, therefore, when we look at the word over here, and that's what we discuss in the interpretations, and I think that interpretation with other umpires is that what we mean by this sentence, that the boat shall not bear away to the course more than 90 degrees, more precise way of it would be saying that the boat will not bear away to the course more than 90 degrees if before that the boat was on the course which was less than 90 degrees. I know it's just mouthful, it's a very complicated way to describe these things, but if you think about it, that's basically was the intention of this rule, that's where the boat broke the rule, when she was on the course before 90 degrees, and now she's on the course. Her new course after bear away is more than 90 degrees. So if we apply that type of thinking over here, then we basically make sure, then it's that's basically, I think, will be in the spirit of this rule and what was being the intention. So while it is, if we read it exactly like that, and maybe it's me who is actually very precisely reading the rule, I think if we read these rules, that the boat, by going already below 90 degrees and then bearing off to another course which is below the 90 degrees, is satisfying to this condition. I think we need to kind of consider that the intention of it, which is that prior to it, if the boat was less than 90 degrees to the wind and now bore off to the course which is below 90 degrees, that would be when she breaks the rule. And if she was already on the course below 90 degrees and bore off to another course which was below 90 degrees and below her proper course, that's not what this rule is talking about. So having said that one, I must say that this is just one way of interpreting. There is definitely would be interesting just to hear is that what the other umpires and what the others sailors think about it. However, and maybe just if there's anybody thinks that there would be a need, for example, for kind of any clarification to interpretations, but however, in the spirit of their original submission, which actually talks about that there was no need in here if you have this situation with a downwind gale. There was no intention, like if I go over here, there was no intention over here to make easier way for blue to escape. So no need to change the rules of the game and how the game is played. Okay, so overall, I think the answer over here, I think this is not a game changer, perhaps needs some kind of alignment and interpretation, different way how the rules would be interpreted. But definitely the rule is slightly changing right now, so that you always anyway need to think about it. Are you sailing to the where exactly you are sailing to the mark that perhaps would need to have some implementation, at which parts of the course you are sailing to the mark which is windward of that. So obviously if you are somewhere between the windward and leeward mark, so if I put it here, yes, so you are sailing to the mark which is windward of leeward. If you're playing over here, you're now not sailing to the mark which is windward of you, because I think the mark is over here. If you are sailing over here, now you are sailing to the mark, which is windward of you, even though that you're on the downwind leg. Yeah. So it would be really interesting to hear. That was only the first event where we actually had these rules. It would be also interesting to hear if it's in the comments, if any of you have any events where the same rule might be applied, and how these calls were made. However, overall, the view is that there shouldn't be a dramatic change in terms of the downwind. It's not a game changer in downwind jail, but definitely there will be a difference that this rule would be applied over here in a different situation if the two boats are, if actually the dial down would be, if the dial down would be happening this way, more traditional. So yes, this rule, we can all agree that that was not an intention to make a game changer. However, here the game is changing because now with this new rule, my interpretation is that you are not, it applies over here. You cannot dial it down below the 90 degrees, even though that after that point, you will be all sailing over here. Not very common situation that is happening, but still was very interesting. And also, as I warned, that's going to be a little bit more about the advanced topics. Okay. Now, again, just want to just repeat over here is that we going to be looking at the advanced learnings from the different advanced learnings from the first match racing event of the year. So we can be streaming it, just streaming it on a few platforms, but also if you want to watch it later, just check it on YouTube. It's going to be recorded over there. Okay, so we covered now the first learning. Let's go to the second new rule and see how it is applied. So the next rule, which is slightly different in this rule book, is the rule 19. And those of you who know, that's the rule which talks about the rules at the abstraction. Now, I'm using here if you see here with the red markings, this is the study version of the rule book, which allows you first to see what was the changes compared to the previous rule book. You can always find it, for example, on the website of the World Sailing, and here you have the full version. But if you get here, you get the study pack. You get also, for example, the study version. So check it there. This is the best way, basically, to check what were the changes. So if we look there, the rule has changed slightly, and the most interesting addition is over here. So it tells that the right of way zoom, come on, doesn't zoom. Okay. It tells that the right-of-way boat, when it changes the course, when choosing on which side of obstruction to pass, she shall give the other boat room to keep clear. And I must say that my absolutely first thinking was, when I read this, I'm like, isn't it what we have in the rule 16? So my first thought was that, is there something that why we need that one? Why do we need it? Because I think we have it in the rule 16. And again, the best way just to understand it is that you look at the proposal and look at the proposal why this rule is changed. It's a proposal which was made in the year 23, proposal number 8. And This is the proposal from the okay, actually it's from the chair. There's some nuance over here. That it finds that particular situation where the rule will allow for the both boats to be exonerated. And usually exoneration is, gives the possibility for the boat, if you are sailing within your mark room or within the room, you just will be exonerated from the breaking the rule. But this gives a possibility to that two boats will be exonerated. And basically, I think this is the example which comes over here, is that when you see that the yellow boat, that's the example that they brought, which basically I'm just trying to explain maybe why the rules would be like that. And if we have let's I'm creating here the abstraction, which is something like that, and it's something like that. This is the abstraction. So first we have a situation that when yellow boat is changing the course, and the yellow boat. So first of all, when we will see here, when two boats are approaching obstruction, we first see who is the right of way. So yellow boat is the right of way. So yellow has the right also to choose on which side of the obstruction to pass. You can pass it on this side or on this side. So as you can see over here, yellow is choosing to pass on this side, which means that she will be changing the course. And as she will be changing the course, she would need to also give the windward boat to keep room to keep clear. However, what we also have is that, and when there is, on one hand, if it changes the course in the very, very last moment, let me make it a bit bigger. If she changes the course in the very last moment and changes it very sharply without giving the room for the blue to keep clear, then blue would be also just exonerated, because yellow is breaking the rule 16. So blue would be exonerated from breaking the rule 11, windward leeward. Okay, so that's kind of understandable. But then also on the other hand, the previous rule allowed this boat to allowed yellow to be exonerated because she is sailing within her mark room. So it means that while she's sailing with her mark room, she would be exonerated from breaking rule 16. And that basically creates now a difficult situation for when two boats are exonerated and each one of them cannot be penalized. Therefore, the intention of this proposal was to say that, listen, while this boat is choosing, because now it's not clear on which side the boat will pass. Maybe it passes here. Now, while she will choose, now she started to choose, she will need to give room for the other boat to keep clear. So by coming here in the very last moment and choosing it so late that blue doesn't have a room to keep clear, in this case, she will not be exonerated according to the new rules, because she did not give room for the blue boat to keep clear. And blue will be exonerated because of that rules. So that is the intention. That's the intention of this new rule when it comes to the abstraction and why it was introduced. So I think it is it is an interesting observation, and honestly, we've had a number of the situation in the Viking Cup and Bidal Cup when these things is played. As you can see, the lake is extremely tiny, and if you would be just making, for example, a race like over here, literally, as you can see here, it's like 200 meters, 200 meters big. So here in the narrowest part, it could be 300-400 meters. So if you race something like that, you will have your pre-start area very close to the shore. So the race, the Viking Cup and the Dance Cup, absolutely great for practicing all kind of situations with the obstruction. Therefore, we had, let me have a station that we have been discussing. I'll play it now here. Oh, maybe XP. So this is a situation, as you can see, two boats are very, very close to the obstruction. They're circling quite close to the obstruction, as usually happens in the match race. And here's an interesting situation, which probably is a very interesting case where there will be a different, might be a little bit different call, but would be that where there is a difference, where is a little bit of a game changer. So let's see how we would resolve this situation previously with the previous group. So once again, we can go now through the whole situation and how it goes. The situation over here. What you usually have in the match race, two boats, when they would need some time to kill, they will go and do some circling. When now we have that situation when the obstruction is so close to the starting vessel, there will be quite a lot of circling happening. And since you need to kill a lot of time before going and starting, what kind of situation, what previously would be applied in the situation like here is another, which was a rapid response call, but it's now in the call book. I'll show them. But let's go maybe first what was the situation. So now when these boats are circling at a certain point, I think this boat is coming over here, and circle back. And then when I don't see which one of them is blue and which one of them is yellow, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. But when this boat is going over here, it continues going lower, and then this boat kind of understands that it won't be able to get there inside and jives back, so that the blue also would need to take an avoiding action. How this situation would be judged before. There is a call, B19, which is perfectly describing what is this situation. B19. Yeah. So let's look at this call in the details of it. So this call describes similar situation without circling, but what it does is that the yellow comes like that to abstraction, and that the blue is getting over here. So why blue would be penalized, as this call suggests? So when yellow, it was right of way. As you can see, yellow is the starboard boat and blue is port. So yellow is chosen the past abstraction on her port side. And usually when you all the time talk about on which side of the abstraction to pass, it's not the side of abstraction, but the side of the boat. So it chooses to pass so that the abstraction is on the port side of the yellow boat. So it means that inside and for determination of the inside and the outside boat, it will be relative to right-of-way boat. And when they are at the abstraction, when yellow is passing the abstraction on her port side, any boat which becomes on her port side, which means that the blue is now on the port side of yellow, then that boat blue becomes the inside boat. So she went inside of yellow, and as the basically call here says, at the position 2, blue needs to keep clear and give yellow room at the abstraction, and yellow needs to avoid. So basically, blue was not giving her room at the abstraction by going inside there. So this was a very, very clear call previously. So having watched the situation according to the previous rules, as you can see, so in this case, the boat on the left would be equivalent here of yellow, and that now the boat on the right would be equivalent of blue. So as you can see, as yellow jibes, blue is going now inside, and at this moment, yellow needs to take an avoiding action to avoid there. So it would be a very strong case previous to penalize blue for going inside. Now let's look at the new rule. New rule says if a right-of-way boat changes the course when choosing which side to pass the abstraction, she shall give the other boat to room to keep clear. Now, key moment now over here, or key situation, is for understanding at which point yellow has chosen when she's at the abstraction, and at which point she has chosen, and when is she's choosing on which side to pass the abstraction. And I think here there might be nuances for the interpretation of it, and I think from the umpire's point of view, it would be something that we will be all the time discussing in the boat. And I think some kind of like a new terminology that we would need to say that yes, I'm right away, I'm choosing, and now I have chosen, which means once you've chosen the side, you already don't need to give the other boat to give room to keep clear. And one can interpret it that obviously now the abstraction is on the starboard side of this boat, and one can argue there are several points of view. One could be that one argue is that the moment she crosses the line to 90 degrees, so she has already chosen that she will pass the abstraction on her port side, and that means that from this moment all the room has been given to blue. That's one way of looking at it. I think it is also probably what comes over here is that once, even if you cross head to wind and abstraction becomes, not cross head to wind, cross 90 degrees and abstraction becomes on the port side of the yellow boat, she's sailing away from the abstraction, so she's not at the abstraction. And I think the rule clearly says that Rule 19 applies between two boats at an abstraction. So now she's not at an abstraction. Therefore, another point would be is when you will see that she, by her turning, Now, even though that obstruction on her port side, she is not yet at an obstruction as she sails away, but at certain point, she will become at an obstruction. And I think that's another interpretation. It means that by doing so, by making a turn, like over here, she's choosing. And if you would interpret it, the rules in this way, that meaning that by first choosing the side over here, and so she's not at an obstruction yet, so the rule doesn't apply. But now when she's at an obstruction by turning over here, she's now choosing the side. So she's now at the obstruction, rule 19 applies, and she's now choosing to pass it on this side. And so from this moment, she would need to give for the blue boat opportunity to keep clear. And considering this situation, which it means that even though that the blue did this moment in the last moment and went there as it was in the previous call book, which would penalize her, with the new rules, one could also consider that this is her chasing over here is actually her choice of the side, which means giving the room for the blue boat to keep clear. So again, very tricky, but potentially different interpretations. Would be really good to see what different sailors, what different match racers, and what is the interpretations of the umpire. Again, this is a new rule book. This is a new rule situation, so it would be very good just to hear. And that was a first event of the year with the new rule book, so that's where we kind of like a little bit discussed where this things applies or not. But definitely I will play that situation once again. But I think as you can see, maybe it would have a different interpretation. So once again, as you can see, this is prior to situation. Now the boat on the left is now crossed 90 degrees, and now she's not on obstruction. Now she will be coming to obstruction, and by coming to the obstruction, she needs to give room for the other boat to keep clear. And if the other boats responded immediately, well, you can argue that they could be responded a little bit more earlier, but let's say that the boat on the right responded immediately. So even then, if the boat on the left would need to give would take an avoiding action, it means that she complied also with the new rule 19. Again, interesting to hear. Leave the again thoughts and comments about if this is how you would interpret the book new rules, because this is definitely is, to me it looks like there's a little bit of a game changer, which basically gave much more power previously to the right-of-way boats, which was at the obstruction, but now it just takes some exoneration away by making the right-of-way boats give room to keep clear at the obstruction. And at this moment, she cannot use the exoneration, which is coming from 19. So, yeah. Okay, now we covered both items one and no, actually I have one more item into one more situation, but feel free also just to leave the comments here, so I have the full agenda. We discussed how the rule 2.7 and so changing the courses change in the match racing, and I think this is clearly was not a game changer, but it requires a certain kind of understanding and common interpretation of the new wording of the rule. Secondly, I think in this situation, I would say that there's a bit of the game changer, not dramatic, but it shifts, gives a little bit of the power, not the power, but it gives a little bit of more obligation of the right-of-way boat at obstruction that she would need to keep clear. Okay, just a second, having a technical problem now with my setup here. Yes, back to it. So feel free just to leave these things on the comments. Yeah, the question is from Afnan. Yes, it will be posted. I mean, there is no recordings from the on the Instagram, so it's a question from Instagram. So, but yeah, find Ilya Barayev Sail Racing at at YouTube. Search for it, and it should be saved there. Feel free to stay. What happened? No. Hold on a second. I'm slightly now in the having problem. Okay, let me leave the comment here. So yeah, Afnan, it will be on YouTube. Search for Ilya Barayev Sail Racing on YouTube. Yeah, there we go. Now it's working. Okay, one more. So again, continuing just to repeat here, it will be pretty advanced level on the match racing, and mostly focusing on the match racing. And let me now discuss one more interesting situation that we had on the event. There we go. Again, since we had one time since all the learnings now from here, it's from the Bedan Lake. As you can see, it's extremely tiny lake, and we have often like one of the best match race sailors in the world coming to close to Rouen and in France, and sailing on this really lake with a superb organization. And very often when we are at this corner, when the wind is coming from this from southwest, this pre-start is happening like over here. And at one day of the event, we had race committee was extremely close to the obstruction. So if I would just show it over here, that would be course, the shore would be extremely close and there will be a restricted area. I think the distance between the race committee, and that would be the pin here, literally between the race committee, it was distance to obstruction, literally probably it felt like 5 seconds to sail. Yeah, Afnan, no problem, thanks. Thanks for the comment, and yeah, check it on YouTube. So yeah, yeah, it was a very short distance, basically, to sail. And very often, when the boats went to the dial-up from the match racing, so from the dial-up, it would be that station when 2 boats will come, they will go catch the wind, stay in dial-up, and as they would start to go back, they would, or just basically a little bit drift back as they are in the dial-up, they would approach the obstruction. And this is also an interesting situation, sort of how to deal with the obstruction rules if the boats are backing the sails and reversing. So again, excellent. Absolutely love to come to the Bedan event to practice for that particular situation. And I think one thing is just worth mentioning is that once we talk about the match racing, of course, you know that in match racing, normally you would have in a normal rule book, you will have the rule which is 21.3, a boat which is moving astern will keep from the sail from the boat which is not moving. In match racing, this rule is deleted, so this one doesn't matter if you're moving astern or you keep the same rights. And however, even in the normal rule book, if both of you are moving astern, so that rule doesn't apply because now you're both moving astern, so you go back to the normal port starboard rules. Now, what happens is when 2 boats are reversing like that, so now are they? Sorry, they are on the starboard tack. Starboard tack, just barely there, and they will now start to reverse. What happens over here? Does the rule 19 apply? Does the blue boat needs to give room for yellow boat to keep clear at the, oh sorry, room at the obstruction? And okay, let's I didn't have precisely exactly the same situation when we were umpiring, but I think one was a little bit quite close, which made us kind of think how it would be, how this whole thing would develop. So first of all, I think it's always good to start with the basics. So this is the windward leeward. So if we go to the let's go to the basic rules that we have. These boats are on the same tack and they are overlapped. Rule 11. So this is the leeward boat, blue. Yellow is the windward boat. Right away, blue. Yellow is the keep clear boat. When they are approaching the obstruction like that, right away boat can choose at which side to pass the obstruction. So now let's look at the rule 19. Right away boats. First it applies when two boats are at obstruction. Okay, they are now at the obstruction. This is a continuous obstruction, which is, by the way, also if you continue an obstruction, if you want to go and see the rule books, it has changed slightly the wording of what is continuing obstruction. But anyway, here is a continuing obstruction, very clear. Now, right away might choose to pass on which side the obstruction to pass. Let's say that if blue has possibility either to luff like that, which is possible. I think if you want, you can check also on my channel. There are a number of the video. I think there's some early video like from 1 year ago when the boats was just sailing upwind with just backing of the sail. Possible. So in match race, everything is possible. So that's she can choose to pass on this side and need then to give room for the yellow to keep clear. Okay. But now, normally in this situation, they would continue to pass over here. And in this case, blue has chosen to pass it so that the obstruction is on the starboard side of blue boat. Now, here comes a very interesting question. When the boats are overlap, the outside boat shall give the inside boat room between her and the obstruction unless she is unable to do so, blah, blah, blah. So the question is that now, are these boats are overlapped? Yes, they are overlap, and because they are on the same tack, and also if we look at the definition of the overlap is that here's a definition of the overlap. However, what happens if they go this way and this boat jibes? Also, and the other question, well, let's put it this way. So the yellow boat is now changing the course. So now that they're on a different tack, yellow now is on port tack, and blue is on the starboard tack. So yellow is keep clear boat, needs to be clear. This is right of way. However, does blue, if the boats are backing, does blue needs to give room to yellow to at the obstruction? That all depends if you consider them overlapped or not. because if the both are overlapped, let's go here. When the boats are overlapped, the outside boat shall give room for the inside boat between her and obstruction. If you consider that the boats are overlapped, then obviously blue, even they are backing, they need to give room for the yellow to keep clear. Now let's go to the definitions here. These terms always apply to the boat on the same tack. These boats are not on the same tack, but they apply to the boat on the opposite tack only when we're 18 plus, or when the boats are sailing more than 90 degrees from the true wind. Now, the question, are the boats sailing now for the more than 90 degrees from the true wind? If the boats are moving forward, then the answer is very clearly no. They're moving, sailing upwind. Now, when the boats are reversing and going this way, are they sailing more than 90 degrees from the true wind? And this is maybe a nuance that is not very often discussed between here, but the interpretation, and that's something that we clearly also applied with umpires, is that yes, because what they're doing is that's their course. This is also in line with all the other with the call that we have in the call book, which basically says that when the boat is changing the direction without changing the course, without changing the magnetic compass course, for example, but changing the direction of movement, she is changing the course. So if you look at the what is the number of this call? Let me see. Here, call B7. Talks about the boats moving backwards and forwards over here. And although yellow did not appear to change the compass course between position 2 and 4, she did change the course by reversing direction to which she's traveling, ahead to astern. So going back to our situation, two boats are overlapped because even though that they are on the different tacks, both of them are sailing more than 90 degrees from true wind. So based on this situation, we know that now the rule 19 applies here, and when the boats are overlapped, so the outside boat, the blue boat, needs to give room to the outside boat to keep clear. Now, what if this boat is tacking? So she's changing, while she changes the course, she's not completed her tack. Would she be breaking the rule 13 and would need to keep clear? She would be breaking the rule 13, but she would be exonerated from that one because she's sailing within her mark room. Well, she is entitled to. And rule 43 basically says that when the boat is sailing within the room, she's entitled to. If she breaks the rule of section A of part 2, rule 15, 16, 31, she's exonerated. And rule 13 is part of that section A. Yeah. So even though that two boats, just to summarize here, traveling back, blue as a right-of-way boat, she needs to choose on which side of the obstruction to choose. She can choose to pass here, then she needs to give room to yellow to keep clear. And now there would be always a very interesting show when two boats, not very often I see it, but sometimes you see when two boats are sailing upwind by backing the sails. That's possible on the keel boats. or if she is choosing to pass over here, because both of them are traveling backwards. So that's their course, and this is below 90 degrees. So even though that yellow will jump first to be a boat, tacking boat, when rule 13.1 applies, and after that one she will become a port boat, blue needs to give room for yellow to keep to room at the obstruction. But exactly room at the obstruction doesn't need to give more. So yeah, that's basically an interesting situation that we have. And as you can see over here, we discussed also about the 19 and that the rule 13.1 applies, but actually rule 13.2 does not apply because the boats are not really a jibing boat, they're attacking boat. However, it just doesn't matter to the application of the rules. Okay. So I think this one is an interesting situation that happened and want to discuss again. Not very often that happens in any other races, but once we are racing at this super tiny lake, literally as you can see the whole lake here, 500 meters, what was it? Probably about like less than 1 kilometer, and you get all the best sailors in the match racing, you get an extremely interesting situation. Okay. Now let's get back to our plan. What are we gonna do? What is in our agenda? Okay, we discussed now the new applications of the rules. Let's talk about the few interesting things that I observed now from the tactics perspective, from the match racing tactics. This is not necessarily, I think, seems to be not a very new, it's not connected to any changes in the rule, but there is one rule where you could apply kind of like a penalty at the, or try to offset the penalty at the windward mark. So we'll just discuss this one. However, if any of you wants to cover some other remaining topic, please please ping. And so please leave the comments with the number, and then I'll go and jump to that situation to discuss. Okay, let's talk about the penalty. So as in match racing, those of you, especially, this is a advanced topic, I'm not going to go too much into the details, but you know that you can be, you can go and have a, you don't need to get the penalty immediately, and you can postpone it until the finish. However, if you're leading goals, if you're going a little bit ahead, then there is very risky for you, for example, to take a penalty if you will end up being a trailing boat. You will kind of give it away. So you want to take a penalty, but at the same time, you want to have a sufficient distance that you know that after taking a penalty, you will be still ahead. Now, what happens is that if you are at the distance so close that you definitely know you cannot take the penalty and be ahead. Very typical common way of setting that penalty is to wait until the downwind and then try to get into the downwind plane. Whereas two boats without the spinnaker is coming in play there. So check a video that I have there, watch party for the Macau, from the Macau Cup. I have it on the YouTube channel. There is actually a number of the discussions exactly where we look how the teams, the best teams in match racing teams in the world use the downwind, try to set up the trap and offset the penalty. If the blue, for example, here is leading with a penalty. If there is a big distance, they will be usually taking around the pin and finishing ahead. Now, there is also a particular distance where you are maybe not that close to get into this downwind game. So that there is a distance, but then at the same time, there is not enough distance for you just safely to take around the pin. So yellow would finish earlier in this case. What I saw now in a couple of French teams that they had this play, I think they were having this playbook, and I honestly did not see that move used so much before, but that's why I thought it was really interesting. It was happened two times in a row. playbook goes like that. That two boats. Let me hold on a second. Let me make it a bit bigger so that we can discuss the situation a bit better. But when approaching the windward mark, the boat will use first they will start to have that game usually before the zone, or they will have it so that when they are on the same tack. So because again, if you watch my Macau race, Macau Cup races, you will see where the 18.3. So normally in 18.3, we'll make yellow boats tack away, and not sail further north, of course. However, when the 18.3 doesn't apply, and let me, those of you, I can just put it on the screen, and I'm talking about the match race version of the 18.3. Takes a while to scroll. Hold on a second, this is B, Appendix B. So we're looking at the Appendix C, match racing rules. There we go. Yeah, that's the kind of pretty complicated rule, but or it looks complicated, but the objective of this rule is very simple. Is just to make sure that the boat if in the zone that the yellow boat would actually be kind of like forced to tack, so that two boats can orderly go around the rules. So this was introduced in several one or two cycles ago at the match racing in America's Cup, when two boats were catamarans, and you wanted also to have some kind of like certainty that the yellow boat would tack away instead of actually having a collision with a blue boat at a high speed. But okay, enough of history, enough of the situation. So when 18.3 doesn't apply, for example, like over here, or the boats are outside the zone, what I saw that there has been a very interesting play over here. When if yellow has a penalty, outstanding penalty, it would slow down over here and try to basically stay over here, but having a significant distance. And then what happens is usually they will get out of the zone, and after they get out of the zone, it means that they can take the penalty. So what usually would happen is that this boat would, for example, if blue would want to be, for example, already attacking here, just try to go around. Yellow would be on the starboard, will try to kind of attack them. Either there will be a penalty on blue, if blue is, for example, on port. So, for example, this might, I think actually that's what usually happened. I think when they were approaching this way, so yellow will laugh. They will go outside the zone. There is a little bit distance. Now, while there is a distance, yellow will try to go and attack with starboard right and see if blue will be able to get the penalty on blue, and if not, they will be able to jibe and go back. So in this case, blue is very effectively taking the match race penalty, which is 270 degrees. So as long as she comes to the close hold sorry, yeah, as long as she comes to the close hold course over here. Because first you either attack this board which is on the port by going here and attacking them on the starboard, hoping that the blue boat is very slow at the response, and by then taking an avoiding action and jibing and coming close hold, you will anyway take a penalty. So you might even, with this move, take your penalty, and in this situation you have either two ways. You either if you have a yellow penalty, you give a blue penalty, which they cancel each other, or you basically take the offset of the penalty and then you can go forward with this. So I saw these things happening actually with two, I think, different teams at the same time. Two different teams in a kind of very close race. So I'm wondering if also it's coming into the kind of like a new move in the playbook, because I haven't seen that one used very often before. So it would be really interesting to see where it goes. We'll be definitely looking at that one. So that was a new thing that I saw at the event. Okay, covered these tactics. Two more items still to discuss. So we have one tactical situation and one little bit more related to the umpire mechanics. How the umpires signal, and so that you would understand maybe a little bit better what we do. Oh, listen, this doesn't work. So let me know also if in the comments any of you want to leave which one is preferable. Otherwise, we'll go in this role. So using Rice Committee vessel in the second phase of pre-start. So there is a common situation that you will have in the pre-start of the match race when two boats are gating, and after gating they will dial up. There will be some situation as that they will stay here for some time, and hold on a second. So they will stay for some time, and after that one, they will be going to what we call a second phase. And the second phase is that when two boats will go somewhere to the playground and will do some circling here, trying to match their timing and so that they can approach back to start. Of course, here everything is not to the scale, but you get the point. So after dial-up, going to the playground. And very often that the boats will exit the restart with being very, very close to each other. And usually, leading boat over here, yellow, might try to use the race committee boat for avoiding the blue taking a controlling position. But because normally, if there will be a no race committee boat, yellow would be very much controlled by blue for not being able to judge. Because even though that they are now on the same tack in the match racing, you would also need to keep clear until your sails have filled after the center boom. Boom is crossing center line. So what you will be doing over here, there is always a moment when the yellow is not able to jump and get, because blue is over here and controlling. However, if you bring the race committee boat, what happens is that position would not be possible, and blue would effectively need to go right behind, which gives now possibility for yellow be free to jibe without any kind of restriction. So in this case, blue. So what would happen is that blue would often, in that situation, take a move so that not to relinquish their controlling position, but by going on this side and again preventing the yellow from jibing. However, there is this moment when there is a race committee, and honestly that also works when the race committee is pretty small inside, in size, but yellow would use already this opportunity and sees that the blue is going over here to jibe and already attack on the starboard. Now, I had that situation 2 times, and I think would be really interesting actually just to talk it through, because there was, I think, 2 times we gave a green flag, and I think there was two different reasons why it was when the green flag was coming into play. So when there is this is a good tactics for yellow to try to attack when blue is coming over here, and that's happened the first time. The blue is comes very close. One of the tactics is just to climb very close at the situation to the race committee, which means that the blue is not able to bear off. So one match what I was umpiring is that literally there was a 10 centimeter gap over here when this blue boat has passed, which means that the blue had to go all the way out from here, because obviously when yellow jibe and acquired right of way to becoming a starboard, it needs to give room, rule 15, for the blue boat to keep clear. And for the blue, what is the way to keep clear? She cannot luff, because that would be a that would be a complete disaster. That's not the way to keep clear. She cannot bear away, because at this moment, when she will bear away, she will make a contact, and giving room means that the boat needs to comply with all the rules, including rule 31. She cannot touch their race committee, which is a mark. And so her only way to keep clear is actually to go lower, to continue this course, and then maybe jibe back. So which allows her to basically kind of get her nose even further on, which means that the yellow often will have to jibe back. Very good move, especially by positioning here in a very I understand how it is from the point of view of the yellow, but they often see that they jibe and they keep, but the blue is going and going and going and going and going. But that's basically goes back to that's what is the way out for the blue, and her way out first to go as much as possible and to go there. So which is a strong, very strong tactics for the blue also to protect. So come very, very close here. However, there is some nuance what I will talk about with the challenge with the umpires, where they can see where the call might go a different direction. Very often with umpires that you will have in this situation an umpire somewhere over here and wing somewhere over here watching the overlap. If the umpire over here, there's very difficult to understand for the umpire what's the distance between the boat, and there might be a message if the umpire is in its kind of like technically correct position over here. The umpires will often might not seeing the distance also misinterpret that going forward is exactly not keeping clear that the boat should avoid without seeing how much room, that it doesn't have any room to avoid. So I think positioning somewhere over here gives a very good understanding. Is the blue boat doing everything that she can to keep clear? And I think here, if the umpire is over here, they can always see. Now, but what often happens, what happens over here, and I think that's where we also kind of a little bit talk how to improve the kind of the positioning of the umpires, is that when yellow will start to take an avoiding action, there might be that type of situation when there is a contact. And this one, honestly, is very difficult to see, because as the umpire, you don't want to get too close, because another opportunity would be is that if yellow jibes a little bit more early, then the blue will need to jibe back, and if you are as an umpire too close, you will end up with 2 boats coming right away to you. So that's not a great position to try to get too close to be able to see this contact. However, of course, you can do the judgment, but I think that becomes quite risky. So what we also discussed, that I think this is an interesting situation for the wing, which is to a little bit modify the positioning of the wing for this particular situation, because normally what wing is positioned to see the overlap between birds. But I think when wing sees that situation starts to develop, go over here could be just to slow down here, because you know that the next move will be a jibe, and next move probably will be something like that. So as a wing, you might be able to see the contact. So in that our situation, what we had two cases like that, and we were very confident. We gave the green flag for the situation, because even though yellow was on the starboard, the way, when she acquired the way, she needs to give room to keep clear for the initially to keep clear for the blue board, and because it was so close, it was not able to bear away. The only way for her was to continue, and then she was keeping clear. So for us, there was no contact; everything was clear. But the second thing where we probably also needed to improve a little bit more about understanding and the positioning game is that similar situation played out, but there was a contact, and based on the position, because it was so close to the race committee, and the wing was over here, seeing the overlap, and I think we were just here as umpires. We were a little bit blocked, so we were not able to see the contact, and that was unfortunate, because in this case, the risk was significantly on yellow, and that would be even penalty yellow, which probably would be also coming surprise to that team. But because this boat as a blue could not bear off, which means that once they started to keep clear, then the right-of-way boats, by doing the avoiding action, she would just contact and will get the penalty on yellow, because she did not give room for the blue to keep clear while she acquired the right-of-way as a starboard. So yeah, now we're going a little bit more advanced thing, like as umpire mechanics, and but yeah, this one is, I think, a very interesting, as you know, like match race is almost like a chess, and there is a number of moves here. So if I just sum up, so yellow would use race committee to make sure to get out of this controlling position by making blue to go behind, so that yellow is free to tackle or free to jibe. Blue will use this opportunity, knowing that she'll lose the control to, if especially a race committee boat is very small compared to the size of the boat, will use the opportunity to come and position at below the race committee to keep the control to a certain degree. Yellow, when she will recognize this, will jibe and use the race committee to be able to jibe to starboard. However, blue can also use the race committee to position herself very, very close. So basically, the only way to avoid that is to continue. And I think, of course, by having that play, you give quite a lot to also this game to umpires, because also based on the positioning of the umpires, they can miss, for example, this short distance. But I think, okay, we'll be all working out to actually position ourselves correctly to understand and judge that situation well. And as well as that, probably for wing, is better to stay a little bit behind to see this kind of contact, which is usually becomes very blocked for the umpire, because it's behind the race committee. Okay, now I think we have the last topic over here, and this one is probably a little bit nerdy, and for those of you who are actually more umpires or actually watching what the umpires are doing, but I think it is important to understand that what are the calls of the umpires, and let me see. Yes, we had an interesting situation in there when there was what made me think, and all honestly, that was something that I was just also pondering in the situation. What would be the correct mechanics? And we have been discussing with the umpires. And here I would be very also happy to hear any other comments from the umpires if you consider the same, or if you would apply the same approach. But the question is that all the time three penalties is always will turn out to the black flag. So we have a situation on two boats, and I think the situation per se now doesn't matter. I think what I'm kind of more interested about how you work with the flag. So two boats where one of the boats will get double penalty. Usually, like two penalties happens, for example, if there's a deliberate break of the rule next also to the mark or close to the finish. There's certain rules that you can, if you look at the call book. Let's go to call book. No, it's a bit further. There you go. So this is M2 call, which basically which describes where usually what are the common cases when you get a second penalty, which means that where the rule is you get an additional umpire initiated penalty where the rule is broken deliberately. And there are some aspects over here is that if you see that situation has been already building up, if it's already, for example, match-winning tactical gain from breaking the rule, for example, at the finish line. And also, as you can see, it's not just misjudgments that they're breaking the rule. And for example, if you are OCS and pushing yourself down on the lured boat, very clear case of getting an additional penalty in match race. So that would often end up with two penalties. This is a situation when you cannot lay and you will tack as a port. You clearly see that the situation barging at the starting mark or denying inside both the mark room. So this is very, very common examples of them where you get the double penalty. So check the call M2. But nevertheless, what this is, if a boat already has two penalties over here, and then there is a situation which falls into what we call a twin penalty. And twin penalty is equivalent of green, but when we are not, as umpires, are sure if there is, like if there was, for example, we might disagree about the call. So and in this case, we usually green if there's a disagreement between the umpires, or if there is there is some situations when we, for example, we won't be able to see, but we, for example, clearly see that there is a contact. So whenever there is a disagreement or there is a doubt and there is no contact, the umpires will display a green and white flag. However, if there is a contact, usually we'll show two penalties, blue and yellow, which cancel each other. And while they cancel each other, we come to a very kind of peculiar situation. So if there is already two outstanding penalties, for example, for blue over here, blue is maneuvering to take the penalties. So we kind of, for example, needs to get out of the zone or doing something. And during that one, there is a second incident, which will result normally in green flag, but because there is a contact and there is some maybe disagreement between umpires or something, we would want to show two flags. Now, we are getting into an interesting situation because three flags, if we show three flags and show three flags, that will already mean that the blue is getting three penalties, which means that probably you would want to disqualify them. Second and then you will kind of end the game. That's one thing. Second, but however, the interesting part that comes over here is that normally, if it would be a green flag, if it not would be twin, still the game would continue and the boat will remain with two flags. Who knows, might even win the race by offsetting it. But now, by showing this flag, on one hand, you think, yes, she's breaking the rule, which means that she needs to be penalized and getting one more penalty, which means that the third penalty, which means that she'd be disqualified. And I think this is one way to look at this situation. Another way is to look at this, you're giving two flags, they're cancelling each other, and then the boat remains with the two flags of the incidents, which is more about the green flag. Also, third option, which is to show a green flag, which is kind of against the general principle, which is usually where you need to show the two when you see the contact that you want to basically you cannot give the green flag. So a couple of rules which are here as a for umpires to look what applies. So let me go to rule. So rule C72E, which applies here, and rule 265A1. And this is the interpretation that we have, what we have arrived to the decision what to use here using this interpretation of these rules. So on one hand is that it says that if the umpires decide to penalize a boat and as a result the boat will have more than two outstanding penalties, the umpire shall signal her disqualification. Okay, that's one rule. This is very clear. So what one word is to look here, more than two and outstanding penalties. Another rule here is C. Let me make the rule book a little bit bigger. Another rule here is C2.E, which means that if the boat has one or two outstanding penalties and the other boat in her match is penalized, one penalty for each boat shall be cancelled, except then a red flag penalty shall not cancel and be cancelled by another penalty. Okay, let's forget about the red flag. This is a key part in here. So that's here. I would just also would love to hear the points of view of the other umpires. But one of the things what we came up with in discussion that the technically and procedurally there should be this approach, because also we do not have three flags to show. We don't have three flags. What would be appropriate over here that in this situation when there is first incident with two penalties for the blue is maneuvering, getting out of the zone, then there is immediately a second incident where we want to give a twin penalty. So we can show green because we clearly see the contact, and using this rule is that we will give the twin penalty, but it has to be shown that first we'll show the yellow flag, which means that according to the rule here, when the boat had two outstanding penalties and another boat in her match is penalized, it will be cancelled. The penalty is cancelled. So now it cancels this penalty, which means that she has one blue, and then the boat gets one more blue, which gives her again to the situation what we want to have more or less what would be with a green flag, that the boat came into the situation with two penalties, then that flags will be normally you would show green, so meaning that the boat will end up coming in this situation with the same penalty, and here by that one you return to a very similar situation, because for example that's an equivalent of green and she will have two penalties. And one particular thing which is worth looking at the 6 point here. If umpires decide to penalize the boat, and as a result, boat will have more than 2 outstanding penalties, then we then she will disqualify. So in this case, she will not have, as a result, will not have 2 outstanding penalties, because the penalties first will cancel each other, and then it means that this penalty will not be outstanding. So the rule for it that you will disqualify that when she has 2 outstanding penalties. But in this situation, by doing these things, you are canceling each other. So she doesn't have a third outstanding penalty. She does a third penalty. She has a third penalty, 100%, yes, but it will not be an outstanding penalty. So which means, because it's cancelled right away, which means that you won't disqualify. And this only would be is if we would have many blue flags, that might be possible to show, but because we have only 2 blue flags, this is purely a mechanic for us to deal with it by showing first yellow cancelling and then showing another blue. So again, happy to hear just what you think. Because this is, again, as I said, it's a very advanced topic. What we are discussing here, there is basically could be different points of view, and I think this is also a part of improving our practices as umpires, as the sailors, and improving the rules by actually going into these corner cases, complicated scenarios, and at certain point having a disagreement and understanding it. And usually when we have the new rule, first events are always a great opportunity for us to find those gray areas, weak spots in the rules, and to understand how to deal and how to interpret these rules. Very often it will end up in having certain calls or cases which will interpret the rules, or sometimes even the rules could be changed. So with those of you who are just will be watching later, please leave the comments. Please, would be very happy to hear just to where you agree, where you disagree. But yeah, that was a summary of my learnings from as an umpire event, from the event in France, which we had in Rouen, which was first match racing event of the year with really high sailors. High profile of sailors, one of the best sailors in match racing, at least in France or Europe. Those of you those of you who want to check more about this event in that situation, you can check some of the analysis that we have in the all kind of social media. So check there. And next, I think going further will be continuing also, of course, analyzing the rule, but I think there is a number of situations that we had with at SailGP last time. So there is a number of situations that I haven't been sharing yet, which happened in New Zealand and at the event in Auckland, I think. Yeah, in Auckland, in New Zealand, and Sydney. Yes. Yeah, a really interesting also situation with having the Shark Island here in the middle. So we'll be doing some of the analysis also, which will include also that was a somewhat controversial decisions of the umpires, which I think they were absolutely no controversy, but I could see that there is a different points of view on how these situations could be interpreted. Yeah, so keep on stay tuned. We're going to be watching, we're going to be analyzing that one in the upcoming week before the event in Los Angeles. Having said that one, so we'll wrap up this event. So if you want to review some of these things, just visit recording, check the recording on the YouTube. That would be at Ilya Barayev Sail Racing. You can search it, and yeah, leave your comments. Happy to hear what you think about these new rules and new situations.